The Atlanta Braves took down the Cubs last night in Game 1 of their series, but the bigger story that kind of overshadowed this, Sean Murphy going back on the injured list. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today, a production of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby, author of the Braves Today newsletter over at bravestoday.com. I want to talk about last night's win. I never would have thought that you would have to come back in a game where you combined to allow one hit, but you did. I want to talk about the rotation, what Atlanta's trying to do during this stretch of games right now. But before we do that, we've got to talk about Sean Murphy, because I swear, this guy is cursed. Dan Housen apparently a couple years ago must have gotten to Sean Murphy. He's played in about 4 games, but on Sunday, late in the game while catching, he was called for a catcher's interference when his glove got in the way of shortstop Haesung Kim's swing, Dodger shortstop Haesung Kim. And after the game, the team announced, like he had been removed from the game. The team announced he was getting some x-rays. Walt Weiss thought at the time that he would be fine. It turns out Sean Murphy was not fine. He has a fractured left middle finger. So it's his glove hand, obviously, where he got hit. And he went on the 10-day injured list. And Walt Weiss said, with the medical update that he had gotten, that Murphy was going to miss at least 8 weeks. So Sean Murphy is probably, I'm assuming the earliest we would see him back would be after the All-Star break. It's already May 13th. This placement was retroactive to May 11th. But odds are we probably don't see him until, I think their first realistic target, if he only takes the 8 weeks, and doesn't require a rehab stint, would be the resumption of play after the All-Star break. It's on Friday, July 17th at home versus the Rangers. Braves have a 7-game homestand before they go on the road. But this is that's, fun fact, that's a stretch of 17 straight games without an off day. It's more schedule quirks there. They start on the 17th and of July, and they don't have an off day until Monday, August 3rd. This is frustrating for a couple reasons. And the first reason this is frustrating is just how snake-bitten that Sean Murphy has been when it comes to injuries. And to recap some of this, right? Braves have him started in 2023. He doesn't go on the injured list, but he misses, if I remember right, he misses like a week in June with a hamstring issue. This was a really interesting time where the Braves were carrying 3 catchers and didn't have a backup infielder. And so I remember somebody on the Braves beat, maybe it was Justin Toscano, going through and detailing the team's plans for backups at every position, right? If they needed somebody at first base, Travis d'Arnaud would play first. If they needed somebody, I think it was either second or third, Eddie Rosario was going to come in from the outfield to play one of those, because he started off as an infielder before he moved to the outfield. If they needed the backup shortstop, Austin Riley was going to kick over from third to play shortstop. Like, they had contingency plans because there was no backup infielder, because they were carrying a third catcher for like a week to see if Sean Murphy could be okay, and he was okay. The start of his 24 season was delayed by an oblique strain. If you remember, that was in the first game, in the Braves, on opening day, in the 6th or 7th inning. By the time he came back, Ronald Acuna Jr. was gone. And so the Braves only got 6 innings from their scheduled or planned opening day lineup. He had a minor elbow issue that summer, but it wasn't a big deal. He had the rib injury last year. That's why Drake Baldwin broke camp on the Major League roster. He ended up ending the season on the IL with the hip issue, which delayed the start of this year because he was returning from the rehab. And then he got 4 games before this. In both 2024 and 2025, Sean Murphy has played fewer than 95 games. And a lot of people are now retroactively criticizing the Sean Murphy trade. I do think that just saying the trade, one, if you're the person, the people who have said that this is the worst deal of AA's tenure, let's pump the brakes and remember that most of this has been injury influenced. Even his poor performance last year was injury influenced. I would argue the only time we've seen a healthy Sean Murphy was the first half of 2023. And got to remind everybody, he hit 306 with a 999 OPS, 17 home runs, and was the starting catcher for the All-Star game. Outside of that, because he dealt with the hamstring and then the fatigue down the stretch, fatigue because of the heat in 23, and then there's been injuries just about every time since then. And even last year, his numbers were not great. He's also playing on an injured hip that eventually shut him down and required him to have surgery. And you can tell that as we've talked about before, that hip injury, the longer he got into the season, the worse and worse it got. The first month of the year, in March and April of last year, Sean Murphy had a 990 OPS. He hit 7 home runs in the first month. And then as this progressively became worse and worse, he dropped into the 600s. And in August, it got so bad, they finally shut him down when they could see his swing was wrong. So let's remember that we've very rarely seen a healthy Sean Murphy. And so criticizing the deal, I think, requires us to kind of ignore that injuries have been the major outcome here and that we really haven't seen very much healthy Sean Murphy since he got here. And I'm honestly not criticizing the player for being hurt. It's not like he's out of shape. He's a catcher. He has a catcher build. But some of this oblique injuries, they happen to everybody. We've seen other guys with these. So, some of this was done to him, like the fractured finger. In retrospect, you can look back and say it's frustrating that we made the deal and that the return that we've gotten has been a player who has missed a lot of time being injured. Even on a dollars per WAR perspective for Sean Murphy, he's still been worth the money that we gave him on the extension. And the deal made sense at the time when you consider the fact that Wilson Contreras was terrible defensively to the point where there were Braves pitchers, and we were never given a name, but all of the evidence points to it may have been Max Fried, who refused to pitch to William Contreras. If he had stayed with the Braves, his future was going to end up being a designated hitter, not a catcher. Anyway, frustrating that it happened to Sean Murphy. The Braves have gone and signed Sandy León to a big league deal to replace him on the roster. León was actually released out of Gwinnett to go join the Mexican League. He joined Saltillo. He played 10 games with them. He was 4 for 28, drove in 4, scored 3 runs, and then was released from that contract to come back to MLB and sign with the Braves. A lot of people have asked, why not? It's a shame that they couldn't bring back Jonah Heim. I do think the thing to remember about Jonah Heim is he was not good for us. Jonah Heim finished his Braves tenure 9 for 45. And of those, he had 8 RBI. 5 came in his last game with the team. He had 4 runs scored. 2 of them came in his last game with the team. People wanting Jonah Heim back are remembering that without remembering that Defensively, he was, on StatCast, one of the worst catchers in baseball in just about every regard. If you're not going to hit, you at least need to be good defensively. Jonah Heim wasn't either. He wasn't doing either thing. So the Braves are going to have to roll with Sandy León for now. There are options out there if the Braves want to try and find a catcher. Like, for instance, the part of the reason the Athletics traded for Jonah Heim was they were putting Shea Langoliers on the paternity list. Well, Langoliers came back, and so now because of that, they've moved on from their backup, Austin Wynns. Heim was making just over $1 million in his contract. Wynns is on an arbitration deal of just over $1 million on his. Maybe the Braves reach back out and say, hey, we'll give you the cash considerations back for Wynns now that he's been designated for assignment. Maybe they just roll with Sandy León. And if the plan is just going to be to play Drake Baldwin behind the plate 4 out of every 5 games, then it makes sense to just roll with Sandy León because you get the mentorship. Drake Baldwin's talked a lot about he learned so much from Sandy León in AAA. Getting better defensively, getting better offensively, how to be a big leaguer, all of that stuff. That having that guy in the catching room with the Braves every day is like having another coach. So I'm sure the Braves will continue monitoring the market. If they get worried that they have to back off of the workload of Drake Baldwin, maybe you see them try to find another catcher. I don't know what this does as far as Atlanta's willingness to consider a trade of Sean Murphy in the offseason. I feel like unless he comes back and he's super hot, you're still in a position where you would be selling at the bottom of his value, and your goal would be just to dump the salary. And AA's repeatedly said that that's not a concern for them. They don't want to trade a guy just to get salary relief. They'd have traded Iglesias and Ozuna last year. They just wanted salary relief. They want a real return, and they didn't get a real return for either one of those guys. That's why they held him. At this point, you would have $15 million a year for 2 more years of Sean Murphy if you're some other acquiring team. And then a team option in 29. And I don't see why a lot of teams would offer significant value for that guy anyway. So they probably end up keeping him, but that's a conversation for later. We'll check back in with Sean Murphy probably around the All-Star break. Well, I'm sure we'll get an update in a couple weeks and see how he's doing. In just a minute, though, Drake Baldwin's going to, in just a minute, I want to talk about the rotation. Drake Baldwin's going to be navigating through 6 starters, not 5. And we'll break that down next, right here on Braves Today. This episode is brought to you by IQ Bar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom-infused coffees are the delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel you need to win your day. The Ultimate Sampler Pack is a great way to try all IQ Bar products and flavors. You get 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ Mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. All IQ Bar's products are clean label certified. They're entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial ingredients. And with over 20,000 5-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom-infused coffees. Their Ultimate Sampler Pack includes all 3. And right now, IQ Bar is offering Braves Today listeners 20% off of all of IQ Bar's products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text MLB to 64000. That's MLB to 64000. That's MLB to 64000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. The Braves got a short start yesterday from Grant Holmes. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But it's interesting that he had the opportunity to start after being moved to the bullpen last week. And it's because the Braves are trying to do a 6-man rotation for just a little while. So if you're unaware of the way the schedule shakes out right now, you've got this 3-game series against the Cubs. And again, we're going to break down game 3, last segment of the show. But then after that, you've got 3 at home versus the Red Sox. Then you go on the road for 4 versus Miami next week. And what's weird about this one, like 4-game series will happen, right? If you play 13 games against your division opponents, one of those series somewhere needs to be a 4-game series. But what's weird is, because it's such a short flight, I guess, from Miami to Atlanta, Thursday night is a normally scheduled 6:40 p.m. Eastern start for Miami. The game that starts earlier in this series is Tuesday's game. It starts at 4:10, which it's kind of a weird scheduling thing. I'm assuming there's something going on where Miami is choosing to start that Tuesday game earlier. But getaway day is a normal 6:40 start, and then the Braves fly home for 3 against the Nationals. Their next off day is the 25th. So they have 13 straight games without an off day. So because of that, Walt Weiss said that their plan for this stretch is to try and run a 6-man rotation. And so Grant Holmes started last night. J.R. Ritchie gets the ball today. Chris Sale is scheduled for Thursday against the Cubs in the finale. Part of me wonders, do the Braves instead, and they've done this before, do they instead push Sale to Boston this weekend and throw Martin Perez on Thursday? I think some of that is, and I hate that, I don't know how I feel about this. Some of that might be, have we already won the series or not? Like, if they can beat Shōta Imanaga tonight, and Braves Today sponsor FanDuel has Atlanta as a home dog against Shōta Imanaga. So, like, Cubs are favored by, I think, a 1.5. Over-under's 8.5. On the money line, Cubs are the favorite here. But if the Braves can win tonight, is that what they need to go ahead and bump Chris Sale to the weekend against Boston? And say, hey, what we're going to do here instead is we're going to throw Martin Perez on Thursday, and then the weekend would have lined up Strider on Friday, Elder on Saturday, Holmes on Sunday. I think what you would rather do instead, which is you would keep Elder on schedule since he pitched on Sunday. You would turn around and pitch him on Friday. You could throw Sale on Saturday and Strider on Sunday. And then that would push Holmes, Ritchie, Perez, those guys to the Miami series. I do think that the reason you can consider this, because we talked to AA about this. We asked AA last year about a 6-man rotation. And he said the difficulty that you have with a 6-man rotation is it requires your bullpen to do a little more. You've got one less guy out there, unless you're the Dodgers, and then you can have 6 starters and still have a full-size bullpen because Shohei Ohtani does not count as one of their 13 starters. Shout out CJ for driving that bus. But the first time you have one of your 6 starters not give you very much length. And I'm not talking about 4 innings like it was last night. I'm talking about, like, this guy gets blown up and he's out in the 2nd inning, right? You're in a situation where it becomes untenable. You have to be able to do something, make a roster move, and get more depth, or you have to throw one of those starters in relief. And we saw that. We saw a series where Atlanta had to go to Reynaldo Lopez and Martin Perez, Didier Fuentes. Like they had to throw multiple guys to get through 2 games. In essence, they had to go with 4 starters to get through 2 games because of short outings. And it ruins the whole plan. So you can try this. And what you've got to get is you've got to get length out of everybody. I do like the adjustment that the Braves have made here, though, by having multiple guys who are starters in the pen. Reynaldo Lopez, and that's a whole separate conversation with Reynaldo Lopez. But Reynaldo Lopez back there, Didier Fuentes back there. You know, Fuentes threw 36 pitches last night to give you 3 hitless, scoreless innings. We're going to break down the series, or break down the opener a little bit later. I'm kind of getting into that now, but multiple guys who can take bulk innings. Because typically the way a bullpen is set up for a lot of teams is you've got one long man, you've got a second guy who you can give a second inning to or try to push him to a third. Aaron Bummer's been that guy for us. I don't think he's that guy now. He's been that guy for us where, yes, he's a single inning guy. He's a lefty ground ball specialist. But also, if we need to, we can push him into a 2-inning role. And there's been times we've pushed him into the third, and sometimes that goes poorly. But he's a guy that we've been able to do that with in the past. But right now, you've got Lopez and Fuentes. And they can both theoretically, again with Lopez, but theoretically give you 2-3 innings. And so if you lose a guy early, you've got a little bit of length. And then your bullpen still has, your trio of high leverage guys. For us, it's Iglesias, Suarez, and Lee. And then another guy that is the top of your middle relief. In our case, it's Kenley, who can step up into a leverage role if you need him to. But he's not the most reliable. I do think Tyler Kenley's issues, I wrote about this on the newsletter on Monday. I do think some of those issues are sample size and, random variants working against him. But the bullpen is typically able to absorb extra innings once in a 4-day span. Atlanta's pen's a little different because you have 2 starters back there, and Fuentes and Lopez. So a little better capacity to do it. And when you're running a 5-man rotation, when Martin Perez is your 5th starter, you have Grant Holmes back there as well, and he can also do it. So that, it gives you 3 guys that can take bulk innings. And it's not the cleanest way to run a pen, and there is some sort of unquantifiable impact to performance by guys not knowing when they're going to start. And I say that assuming that they don't know. It's entirely possible this whole plan was laid out to all of the pitchers, on the flight home from LA on Sunday. That Walt Weiss was on the plane and was like, hey guys, hey Martin, hey Holmes, hey Fuentes and Lopez, here's what I'm going to do. So they could be aware of it, but we commonly assume that guys maybe aren't as prepared to go deep into a game when they don't know when they're going to start and when it's kind of up in the air. We'll see how they navigate this stretch without an off day. I complain sometimes about the schedule. I feel like this is another stretch where, yes, I understand you got to have a 4-game series with the Marlins somewhere. It just feels odd to both have a 4-game series in the middle of that and not give them an early flight so that they can get home in a reasonable time, right? If that makes sense. I know Miami to Atlanta is not that long of a plane flight, but it's just odd to me that you can not only make them play 13 games in 13 days, but one of the 2 getaway days is a night game. And if you were curious, there are rules about what time the game has to end. Actually, the official rule is if there's travel involved, the latest that you can start the game. And so this situation does fall under MLB's rule of, because of the distance, they're allowed to start at 6:40, in essence. Some teams are really good about getting out of town as soon as possible. Some teams are not. The Angels frequently push their start times to the latest possible minute before they're required to start the game on a travel day. And it all kind of comes back to like concessions. Like they want people in the ballpark. They get better attendance for a night game than a day game. And so that's why they do it. It's just frustrating that the schedule breaks out like this, where you have 13 games in 13 days, and they're going to land in Atlanta on Thursday at probably close to midnight, and the guys are going to get home from the airport at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. to turn right around and come back to the ballpark for a game on Monday. Just feels like you should have, maybe that 4:10 start on Tuesday, maybe that should have been the Thursday time. Anyway, in just a minute, let's talk about last night's game. Some frustrating short start from Grant Holmes, a breakout for Mike Yastrzemski. We'll do all that next, right here on Braves Today. Atlanta Braves beat the Chicago Cubs last night 5-2, and there was a lot of really interesting and good things to come out of the start. So, just so I've done the plug here, BravesToday.com, after every game, after I'm done with the postcast, we publish what's called Today's Three Things. And it's the game story from the game. We talk about the turning point of the game. We talk about who the player of the game is. And then I have a section called What You'll Be Talking About. And it's the biggest story, at least for me, that came out of that game. And then there's a link to the postcast if you want to go watch the postcast with me and Jake Mastriani of Locked On Braves as we break down and talk about what happened live immediately after the game. I mean, I'm usually in the recording room. Jake gets in there within 2 or 3 minutes of the game ending, and we go live. It is very quick. So, shameless plug there if you want that. But in the game last night, it's really funny. The Braves had allowed one total hit, but yet they had to come back to win because they were down. So, 2-1 deficit because of Grant Holmes. And I think that's worth discussing because Holmes faces one over the minimum in the first 3 innings. He gets through that first time through the lineup. He issues a 2-out walk in the second inning, but outside of that, he strikes out 3. He gets 3 ground balls. He has 8 whiffs. He's kind of cruising the first time through. And then as Grant Holmes does, it all kind of imploded in the 4th inning. He took 38 pitches for the first 3 innings. He took 39 for the 4th inning alone. The number 2 hitter, Michael Conforto, was the one that started the inning. So, again, one over the minimum for the first 3. And Conforto strikes out. It takes 9 pitches. He's just fouling stuff off. And to Holmes' credit, other than one heater that was in the zone that Conforto fouled off, all of these pitches, 9-pitch at-bat, one of them is in the zone. One or more of them was touching. That was a called strike, to open the at-bat. But Holmes is just dropping changeups and sliders below the plate, and Conforto's fouling them off. And he finally gets Conforto to strike out on a curveball. But it kind of set the tone, right? Alex Bregman saw the whole arsenal. Alex Bregman works a longer at-bat. He works a 7-pitch at-bat. He hits a home run to left on an elevated four-seamer. Again, kind of hard to criticize Holmes here. The pitch is above the zone. It's not touching on a 3-2 count. And the only pitches that he threw that were in the zone, he had a first pitch strike that was up and away on the black. It was ruled a ball. We overturned it. And then he dropped a 1-1 sinker, front hip. And Bregman challenged it, and it was upheld as a strike. And then he dropped a slider at the bottom of the zone that was fouled off. Everything else was out of the zone. But Bregman wasn't chasing like Conforto did. And so he gets the elevated fastball, and he pops it for a homer. 2 long at-bats. And for some reason, that sequence seemed to just take Grant Holmes. His command goes away. He walks Ian Happ in an 8-pitch at-bat. And same thing. He's got some fastballs in and around the zone that are getting fouled off. And the difference here was he got Conforto to swing and miss on a curveball below the zone to end that at-bat. He tries the slider here, and Ian Happ takes it. There's the walk. Seiya Suzuki then walks on 4 straight. The last pitch is a sinker that's just outside, but for the most, just 4-pitch walk. Michael Busch, 4-pitch walk. So, like, he battles 3 guys really well and comes out of it with a home run, a strikeout, and a walk, and then he just gives out 2 free passes to load the bases with 1 out. And this is that Grant Holmes thing where the second time through the order, they just seem to see his stuff better. He gets Moises Ballesteros to ground out to Ha-Seong Kim, and Atlanta almost turns a really excellent double play here. Kim gets the ball behind the second base bag, momentum going towards first, but he sees Albies coming to the bag, so he stops and flips to Ozzie instead. Ozzie tags second and then fires to first, but because Ozzie's arm strength, when he fires to first, it's still kind of like a rainbow lob. They don't beat Moises Ballesteros to first. Another run scores. It's now 2-1 Chicago. And then Dansby, as Dansby Swanson can sometimes do, strikes out on 3 pitches. One of them was in the zone. That's just kind of shout out Dansby. In Dansby's defense, pitch 2 was a ball. A slider below the zone that was called a strike, but they were out of challenges. Bregman had popped the second challenge, so they couldn't challenge it. And the inning's over. So he gets out of a bases loaded 1-out jam with only 1 run allowed. But again, it took him 39 pitches to get through the inning. And it was just a tiny margin that let the second run go on the board. But that was it for Holmes. At that point, he was at 78 pitches, and they went ahead and made a move. They pulled him out. And when you look, like, he never even got to the number 9 hitter. So he faced 8 of the 9 hitters in the order the second time through. And remember the first time, 1 over the minimum, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts, 3 groundouts, 8 whiffs, 35% CSW, called strikes plus whiffs. This time, 2 runs on 1 hit, 3 walks, 2 strikeouts, 1 groundout, only 3 whiffs, 17% CSW. And it has to be some sort of like in-inning fatigue thing. The sequencing was roughly the same. He threw a couple less 4-seamers, a couple more changeups, but not anything significant enough to like overall change his sequencing, right? The usage was still, this was the most used pitch, this was the second, this was like whatever. It just was slightly different amounts of fastballs and changeups. It has to be some sort of fatigue thing. He had those longer battles, and so because of that, he must have just run out of gas in that inning. And that's why all those walks happened. But it's just the continuation of a trend that we see with Grant Holmes. It's not the first time that we've said, oh yeah, Grant Holmes, the second time through the order, is not very good. Shout out to Baseball Reference for having this in such great detail. You've heard of the third time through the order penalty. Grant Holmes has invented the second time through the order penalty. So in his major league career with Atlanta, hitters on their first plate appearance against him when he's starting are hitting 190 with a 556 OPS. 8 total home runs in 324 plate appearances. Okay. In their second plate appearance against him in the same game, when he is a starter, they are hitting 284. So almost 100 points better off of Grant Holmes the second time around. Instead of slugging 296, they're slugging 502. So his OPS goes up by 310 points to 866. Those same guys who had 8 home runs now have 16 home runs the second time through. He's actually not bad the third time through, but I think this is survivorship bias. Like, he's allowing a 232 average and a 759 OPS the third time through. But I think this is survivorship bias on those games where he's totally locked in and they let him get to a third time through the order. I don't think this is some sort of, once he gets to the second time of the order, he's fine. I think this is a survivorship bias situation. But he's markedly worse the second time through. And so I think that's why that utility pitcher role is the right role for him. He can make spot starts if you need him to. And it's going to have to be something like this where you're going to have to battle to get him through the order the second time. Maybe the plan, and shout out to Braves Today Premium subscriber Tom, who left this comment on the scouting report newsletter yesterday afternoon previewing the game. Maybe the plan is just Grant Holmes, go get 12 outs. Hey, Didier Fuentes, you come in and come get us, 9 or 12 outs. Maybe the plan's just going to be to piggyback them. It's a hard strategy to run when you're already a man short in the bullpen. It worked last night. You got the 3 scoreless, hitless innings from Didier Fuentes. I think he walked 1, struck out 3. Dylan Lee pitched a clean 8th. Iglesias pitched a clean 9th. And the Braves allowed a grand total of 1 hit in the game to the Cubs. The Cubs were 0 for 2 with runners in scoring position in this game. It was as close to domination as you could get. Not that you ever do this, but the Bregman homer was the only hit they had was a home run. The team that walks the most in baseball walked 5 times. Now, 4 of them were off of Holmes, and you saw one of those guys come in to score. They cashed it in, but great win for the Braves. On the offensive side, Austin Riley got a home run. Mike Yastrzemski got his first home run of the season. He also, and it was a good piece of hitting, right? 7th pitch of the at-bat, he laid off several pitches out of the zone to get to a full count, made Colin Ray come back into the zone, and then popped one to the chop house. I was saying Rhea, by the way, yesterday instead of calling Ray. I was saying Rhea, just trying too hard. Shout out to everybody who emailed me or texted me or DM'd me and like, hey, you're saying that wrong. Appreciate y'all. But Yaz's home run in the 5th was like that. His single in the 3rd was very similar. He didn't chase out of the zone, made Colin Ray come into the zone, and jumped on a fastball that was probably in a bad location. And between all of that, he made a really good catch in the 2nd inning on a 106 mile an hour liner to right. 67% hit probability yesterday. Might have changed a little bit, but probably not much. There's no wall adjustment there. But made a really good jump and got that without having to leave his feet or anything. Made a potentially difficult catch look routine. I'm hopeful that this can kind of kickstart his season. He talked to the broadcast after the game just about the fan support in Atlanta and all of that. And so I'm hopeful that if he can get going, if Riley can get going, again, Riley had a home run last night too. Think about the fact that Atlanta's done what they're doing as far as their record goes without anything from Yastrzemski, without much of anything from Austin Riley or Ronald Acuna Jr. If you can start getting contributions from those guys, it will, 1, help when somebody else starts slumping, and 2, just make this offense even better and even deeper. So, kind of love that. Tonight's matchup, I kind of mentioned it already, Shōta Imanaga versus J.R. Ritchie, going to be a really... Shota's not throwing incredibly hard, but it's a very deceptive fastball. It's a low VAA, high carry, and high induced vertical break fastball that he uses really well, and he's having a breakout season, 2.28 ERA. We'll break down everything about what Shota's doing and the bullpen status for both teams and all of that stuff on the scouting report this afternoon. It's a written article on bravestoday.com. There is a live 10 to 12 minute stream on YouTube. I don't take questions or anything, just kind of heads up there. I've had people drop questions in the chat, and I'm usually trying to get in and out on that quickly enough. And then I take that audio and release it on audio in your podcast feed as well. So if you want to be prepared before the game, that usually comes out once lineups are out, a couple hours before game time. And we'll go more in detail on exactly what Shota's doing, his sequencing, his strengths, his weaknesses, how the Braves are done against him, J.R. Ritchie, the bullpen status, the lineups, all that good stuff. But that'll do it for the show. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time on Braves Today.